Welcome to Getting Legal With It, a podcast for Colorado young lawyers by Colorado young lawyers. I'm your host, Kevin Cheney. For those listening to us for the first time, I'm a personal injury and criminal defense lawyer here in Colorado. I graduated from the University of Colorado Law School in 2014 and founded my practice, Cheney, Galluzzi & Howard, LLC, a short time later. I'm a member of the Colorado Trial Lawyers Association, where I serve on its board, executive committee, and legislative committee. I also serve on the Colorado Bar Association's Board of Governors, the CBA Executive Committee, and the CBA Young Lawyers Division Executive Council. Finally, I'm also a member of the Colorado Criminal Defense Bar Association. If you're interested in learning more about any of these wonderful organizations, please feel free to shoot me an email at kevin@cghlawfirm.com. This podcast is created and sponsored by the Colorado Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division. Our goal with this podcast is to bring you bi-weekly episodes with information that is both fun and informative for young lawyers. We have some awesome guests lined up, and we are just getting started. And with that, let's jump right in. I'm really excited for our guest today, one of my friends and actually my current landlord, Sidartha Rathod. Siddhartha is a partner at Rathod Mohamedbhai, whose practice areas include civil rights, employment law, and physical abuse of student cases. Siddhartha has been a faculty member for the National Institute of Trial Advocacy since 2011 and is an adjunct faculty at the University of Colorado School of Law, also my alma mater, Go Buffs. So welcome to the podcast, Siddhartha. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, you got such an interesting practice area and have been part of so many, cases that have kind of been in the media and really kind of shaped a lot of the criminal justice reform that we're seeing here. So really excited to chat with you today. But before we get to all that, let's introduce you to our listeners and learn a little bit more about you. So why don't we just kind of start off with, where did you go to college and law school? Give us the, kind of few-minute bio here.
I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio for undergrad. I then went to the United States Marine Corps. I was on active duty from 99 through 04. After that, I came out to Colorado, where I went to law school at CU Law.
And did you kind of always know you wanted to be a lawyer, or tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you go from, Ohio to the Marine Corps to going to law school?
I didn't know a lot of lawyers when I was younger. In fact, probably before the Marine Corps, I probably had met one lawyer in my entire life. So, a different path. My parents always said, you argue with us so much that you'd make a good lawyer, not knowing what lawyers do, really.
Mine told me the same thing.
and so after the Marine Corps, I went to law school. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of thought I was going to go in and do a JD MBA. Realized I didn't want to be in school that long. Then I thought I'd go to big law. I did my first summer at a big national law firm. It was a great experience. I made more money that summer than I did my first year of working as a lawyer. But I realized it wasn't for me. Then I tried, some different things, and I finally came and found a love of being a public defender, and that's where I started my career as a public defender.
Awesome. Was there a moment, I guess, in the Marine Corps when you were like, you know what, I'm going to go to law school, or was there somebody that you met, or how did kind of law school get on your radar?
I'd always thought about it, and I thought about it in undergrad. I actually took the LSAT in my final year of undergrad, and back then it was only good for 3 years, so I assumed it wouldn't be good when I got out of the Marine Corps. But then they changed the rules, and I was grandfathered in, and
oh, great!
So I just applied, and
the rest is history. The rest is history. That's awesome. Did you know when you went to law school? So it sounds like you did big law for a little bit, found out that kind of wasn't for you. Did you know you wanted to do something in the courtroom, like some type of litigation, when you first went there?
So, I think I have a non-traditional background, and especially for lawyers. And so, I didn't really know. I didn't really know exactly, what lawyers did. And, I really credit Anne England at CU Law.
She's the best.
I did the clinic with her in my third year, and I just kind of fell in love with it.
Yeah, I can't say enough positive things about Anne England. She also was so instrumental, I think, in where I am. I'll never forget, I was a 2L, and I started the clinic. And that very first day, she passed out a bunch of files to each of us, and we're like, all right, these are your cases. Don't screw it up or they're going to jail. And she was like, good luck. And obviously she gave us way more instruction than that, but I remember trying my first case with her. She also was our mock trial coach, and it's crazy just how certain individuals can just have such an impact, on your career. And I definitely would put her in that category.
Anne's amazing. We both got to see law at the same time. And it was, really fortuitous for me and shaped my career.
Great. So I think you said that you first became a public defender kind of on graduation. How long did you stay there, and kind of what was that experience like?
I loved being a public defender. I was a PD for a little over 3 years, and it was amazing. For me, I just got tired of seeing my clients continually get hurt by the system. We could only represent them on the criminal side. So the worse they got beaten by the police, the more seriously they got charged. Someone would, their car would be illegally impounded, and they'd lose their job, and we'd suppress the, impounding or search of their vehicle, and the case would get thrown out. But then the, Denver would, charge them $50 a day for their car, and they're like, you owe us $5,000, and they're like, my car's only worth $1,000, and I lost my job. And there's no way to help them on that side. And while the PDs are doing an amazing job day in and day out in the trenches, I wanted to have a impact on the civil side.
And I think it's really important that you bring that up, because I think that a lot of people who don't have any experience in the criminal justice system think, hey, you were charged with a crime. You ended up either being found not guilty, or the charges were thrown out on because of some evidence issue or because of misconduct. And the system worked, basically. Forgetting that individual may have spent, thousands of dollars on an attorney if they hired one privately. Or like you said, they may have lost their job. They may have lost their car. If it's a domestic violence case, they may have been forced to move out of their home. It can have all of these massive impacts on their life. And then at the end, it's basically like the government's like, oh, our bad. Sorry, go ahead and move on with your life now, like it never happened.
Even if you are found guilty, it doesn't mean you are. But also, routinely nowadays, the punishments don't fit the crime. The consequences don't fit the crime. We're over-incarcerating. It's an incarceration of those with mental health, those with substance abuse, and it is simpler for our society to simply lock them up and forget about these individuals. And unfortunately, it has a greater effect on people who look like me. The black and brown community are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system, in jails, in prison, and the system is broken.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think we got a really good example of that recently in Colorado. And Colorado, for its credit, has done some criminal justice reform. We have a lot more to go, a lot more to do, but we are moving in the right direction. But just recently, we saw it with the I70 case, where a young, poor brown person was driving a truck that probably wasn't properly maintained by his company, and probably didn't have a ton of training, and he obviously made some mistakes. I mean, a jury found him guilty, only to be sentenced to 110 years in prison for what was ultimately an accident. And recently Governor Polis commuted that down to 10 years. But I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people that don't necessarily pay attention to this stuff, where you're just like looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, like how can someone get the same punishment for accidentally hurting someone with a truck? It would have been the exact same outcome had he purposefully drove it in there, like had he tried to kill people.
I think Alexis King, the Jefferson County District Attorney, is one of the most progressive district attorneys in our state. I think she would have rectified that situation, and she was in the process of doing that. So, I'm glad the governor decided to, take action as well. Mm-hmm. But I think, there are, as you said, Colorado is a moving in the direction of being a very progressive state. And when we look at district attorneys like Alexis King, Michael Doherty, they are the ones who are moving our state in that progressive way.
It is shocking. For years, we never saw a district attorney basically testify on behalf of a criminal justice reform bill. It was pretty much uniform opposition, regardless of party. And I think last session, we really started to see a change. It's not all of them, but there are more and more district attorneys who are like, these large sentences or, these harsh laws that we have aren't necessarily making us safer. They're not necessarily protecting the community. And then sometimes, like you said, like if we take an individual and charge them with a crime and that person loses their job or loses their car or loses their home or loses all of it, that doesn't benefit anyone. That doesn't make our community any safer. It doesn't make crime less likely to occur. And so I do think that we've kind of begun to see some of these more, holistic, looking at it from a holistic angle and saying, how can we change this? How can, we become less harsh, but also, start focusing on the actual things that may prevent this from occurring in the first place.
Absolutely. And I think we often look at things as an us and them. We look at it in those people charged with or convicted of crimes, in the rest of society. Or we look at it as a public defender versus district attorney type atmosphere when, yes, it's an adversarial system, but oftentimes we do need progressive individuals and we do need to be working with, the whole community. And we need progressive DAs out there who are willing to say, hey, you know what, maybe this wasn't the right outcome. Let's change that. And I think we have that with Alexis King, and I think we have that with Michael Doherty and some others out there. But I think we need a lot more of that.
Absolutely. And I think that was a really important point, is not dehumanizing individuals. And I think Brian Stevenson, said it best when we are all more than the worst thing that we've ever done. Maybe the worst thing you've ever done isn't, some capital crime, but you certainly wouldn't want to be judged on how you were on your worst day and the thing that you ever did. And it's so easy to punish people when they're othered. When this person is a thief, this person is a murderer, this person is a violent individual, and you basically strip them of their humanity, and that often leads to these really disparate outcomes when we can really try to focus on these people and be like, these are human beings. They may have done something wrong, and even as someone who's very pro-reform, we can still say, look, this action was wrong or this action harmed people, but we also need to recognize that they're a human being. They have life experiences. There's a lot more complicated than just being like, this is what they did, so, let's lock them up and throw away the key.
Yeah, we've all made mistakes, including myself, and we all wish we could go back and change decisions and, and make different choices here and there. I think the question is, what do we do moving forward, and how do we make change moving forward?
Yeah, and we could have had a whole conversation just on potential changes in criminal justice reform, but I want to kind of pivot to our main topic for today. So it sounds like you were doing the public defender thing, and you saw all of this injustice, and you got kind of inspired to, hey, maybe let's go on offense. Let's start trying to hold these government actors, whether that's an entity or an individual, accountable for some of these things. So how did you kind of get your start in civil rights law and this kind of holding these kind of bad actors accountable?
So I went to a boutique civil rights firm, and then 10 years ago, my business partner, Rathod Mohamedbhai, and I started Rathod Mohamedbhai, and we've just slowly grown that firm. Each year we're now 12 attorneys. And then staff, and I think we'll be, by the end of this month, we'll be 13 attorneys.
Wow. Good for you guys. What is a day in the life? I think that when a lot of people dream of going to law school, a lot of them dream of kind of working for the ACLU or working for a civil rights law. I mean, it's a really attractive area of law. What is the day-to-day life of a civil rights attorney?
Well, before I answer that, I think that's absolutely correct. A lot of people come to law school wanting to do civil rights. In fact, I've taught a presentation a number of times at CU and DU entitled why everyone comes to law school wanting to do civil rights, but no one does.
Right.
That's a whole different category. Entries to barrier, costs, legal knowledge, things like that. But what's a day in the life of a civil rights attorney? It's every day is different. You're working on cases, whether it's a police shooting or a, abuse in school, or flying out and representing collegiate athletes on the East Coast, or an employment case. So it's a broad area. We did the Wyoming marriage equality case. It's kind of whatever we are passionate about and want to work on, the firm, we get to work on it. And that's what's so exciting.
Are you guys, obviously probably compared to a public defender, you are not in the courtroom as much as I'm assuming you were back in your PD days. But is it a lot of writing? Is it a lot of courtroom work? Is it a lot of meeting with clients, or kind of a combination of all three?
It's a little bit of everything, but I think if you want to do civil rights, you got to become a strong writer.
Okay.
Writing is key. Yes, we are in the courtroom a lot. No, not like I was when I was a public defender, which was
nobody is.
4 to 5 days a week.
Yeah.
But you're litigating a lot, so it's a lot of depositions. A lot of motions and advocacy that way. A lot of client meetings, witness interviews. Sleuthing and being your own detective, or hiring private investigators to do witness interviews. But a lot of times it's better for the attorneys in the office to do that work themselves, so you get a feel of who the witness is.
Right.
And then there's a lot of writing. When you want to sue the government, it is complex. When you want to go after big companies for wrongs, it is complex. So holding municipalities and companies accountable is a difficult area of the law, and you have to really be able to shine in writing, because that's how we convey as lawyers the majority of what we do. It's the oral argument when we get to court on a motions issue is only secondary to the writing. The judge is mainly reading and then making their decision.
Right.
They're just supplementing it with, hey, I have a question about this or that. If your writing is not good, you are not going to win, regardless of how good your oral advocacy is. And you're not going to get to trial. So it doesn't matter how great of a trial attorney you are. And I love trials. I've been teaching trial advocacy at CU Law and at NIDA for 7 years at CU Law and 11 years at NIDA. And I love it. I love being in trial and doing trials. But you can't get there if you can't write.
And that seems to be especially relevant for civil rights cases, because there's so many avenues where the corporation or the government can kind of win, everything from qualified immunity to different motions practices. So I think it's really important for people to understand how important writing is, and you are not the first guest to really hone that in. I know they hone that in at the law schools, and as a law student, I remember listening and being like, I know writing is important, but like I'm going to do all of my work in the courtroom. And then you get to the actual practice of law, and you're like, man, they were right. Like writing is everything. And if you can't write well, and you can't get your day in court, if you can't get to the jury because you're losing on either a motion for summary judgment or all of these different ways that our cases can be kicked, you can be the greatest speaker in the world, the next Jerry Spence, and it's not going to matter. It's not going to help your clients.
Absolutely. And I think what people don't recognize with civil rights, so police brutality, a jail death, a officer shooting type case, or a officer involved death type case, it's our firm up against, on average, 5 to 7 other firms. So we're not one-on-one. We are us versus teams of attorneys. On the other side, we'll routinely have 7 to 15 opposing counsel.
Wow.
Because each defendant gets its own firm. Each firm staffs the case with 1 to 3 attorneys. Then you have the municipality, so the city attorney's office,
right,
on top of that. So it is immense the amount you have to litigate against, and that again is shown in your writing.
Right. So we've obviously talked about how writing is just so crucial. What other things, if there's a law student listening who is passionate about civil rights, what kind of things does your firm look for? Or do you know that other kind of civil rights firms look for? I mean, are they looking for, order of the coif top grades? Are they looking for people who have volunteered for nonprofits and have kind of showed their activist side and kind of their passion for it? Are there specific classes that you recommend them taking that, may be helpful? What kind of stuff can a law student do who's interested in civil rights law?
So first, I think a demonstration you're passionate about it is key. And that can be in volunteer work, in the organizations you're part of, just by being out there in the community. My entire firm is routinely, at events and attending events, and we try to, be out there in the community. And so, the students who are passionate about it are out there, and they want to meet attorneys who do this area. They are volunteering for different organizations. But it's everything. You need to be a strong writer. You need to be a strong advocate. You need to be passionate about it. And you shouldn't give up just because you can't come out of law school and find a job at Rathod Mohamedbhai or one of the other few boutique firms or the ACLU. There are other opportunities. Just keep your eye on the prize. Go be a public defender and become a badass trial attorney, but write at the same time. Mm-hmm. Volunteer to do all the county court appellate briefs so you become a better writer. Go to Colorado Legal Services. That's civil rights work. That's what they're doing there, day in and day out. So, cut your teeth where you can, and then stay part of the community, and then transfer into our firm.
Right.
So if you can't graduate and get that federal clerkship, which isn't a requirement, but it's great. It makes you a better writer,
right.
Things like that. There are other ways and other avenues to getting into civil rights.
I think as you mentioned, there's not that many firms, that in this area. Is it fairly competitive? I mean, do you guys get a lot of applicants, when you guys do have job opens? I think you mentioned that you're going to be hiring a new attorney here soon. Is it relatively competitive? I mean, do you guys get a lot of people interested in kind of working for your firm?
Yeah. When we put a ad out there, we get hundreds of applicants.
Wow.
That said, we don't put ads out anymore. People tend to come to us. They find us. They get an introduction. They come to coffee. They, start attending events. We see them in the community, and we then go after them.
Wow.
I would say the last number of hires, 4 of the 5 last hires, we have gone after them. There have been, individuals with really interesting and unique backgrounds that, met somebody in our firm or, kind of put a bug in someone's ear,
right,
that they're interested in, and we've kind of, hired that way. We don't hire on need. I think if you're hiring when you need an attorney, you're behind the power curve.
Oh.
It takes a year to get an attorney up to speed.
Right.
We hire on talent. And that talent could be in writing, it could be in oral advocacy, it could be in diversity of background, it could be in 100 different areas that we find impressive. And, timing lines up and things work out sometimes.
I think that's a really great thing. And, I know we're going to talk a little bit about running your own law firm later, but that's really good advice. I think that, if you don't necessarily always want to hire on need, or if you can, hopefully never have to do that. And rather, if you see somebody who is talented and has the skills and you think is going to make your firm better, don't lose out. Don't wait. Don't assume that, they're still going to be there, when you need them. Before we get to kind of discussing a little bit about running your own firm, is there any exciting cases that you've been working on, or maybe a case that you're most proud of that your firm has worked on recently that you kind of want to talk about today? I know you guys, just a quick Google search, you guys just have so many really important cases and really holding the feet to the fire of some of our governmental entities here in Colorado. But is there anyone that kind of stand out that you'd like to chat about today?
I think all the cases are unique. Whether it's we represent the mother of Elijah McClain, whether it's Kyle Vincent, who was brutally beaten, by Aurora, whether it's Johnny Hurley, who was the hero in Arvada, who was then shot and killed. Those cases are all, high publicity, and they're meaningful because with that publicity, you can make change. But even the day-to-day employment cases that we handle, or, the LGBT student who's being bullied at school type case that no one hears about.
Right.
But where we can make changes in that school, where we can greatly affect the quality of life of that student or that employee. We can, be there in their difficult times. Those are meaningful for me. That ability to be there for someone who is struggling, and it's difficult. It's emotionally taxing. We talk a lot in our office about secondary trauma.
Yeah. And
making sure our attorneys are all aware about it. And, if I catch myself snipping at my kids, I'm thinking about, hey, what's going on? Did I just attend an autopsy of a juvenile? Am I overstressed about, this case? Or, this is the third funeral I attended, this year, so, but it's meaningful when I get to be there for that family. And I think we go above and beyond the law. And I think you have to. If you're going to do these type of cases, you're going to be involved in these people's lives. It doesn't end when the case ends. And it doesn't begin when you file a pleading. If you're going to take these cases on, you've got to be involved in their lives to the degree they want you to be. And you have to be there for them. You have to accept that call, or call them back first thing in the morning, and be responsive and make sure that it's not about you, about your own publicity or your own future as a lawyer, but it's rather about them and their needs. And what does that client need from you? And are you serving the client? I really look at ourselves as a service law firm. We serve our clients. Every lawyer, every staff member, everybody in our office, we serve our clients. And I think if you do that, every case can become meaningful.
I think you said something that I think I want to touch on. Talking about affecting change and kind of, changing the systems or whatever happened to that led to these terrible events happening. Is that something that you guys can often push for in a settlement agreement? Say, hey, compensation is nice. Obviously, there is a monetary component, but we want to see this policy change. We want to see this training implemented, or we want to see this type of stuff prohibited going forward. Is that something that in your guys' settlement discussions that you guys are able to push for and say, look, money's great, but this is what we really want. This is what matters.
Absolutely. And every single one of our clients, we won't take their case if all they want is money. And I've never had a client who has told me that they don't want change. They don't want another mother to be sitting there when, their son has died or their daughter was shot. They want to make sure that the next family isn't in their shoes. And same in employment law. It's not just about the money. They want to make sure, hey, what changes did the, employer, the hospital, the municipality do to affect change in this situation? And you don't always get it.
Right.
But it's important for every single one of our clients, and it's something that we do in pretty much all our cases.
That's really great, man. I mean, because, obviously a large monetary judgment can sometimes change policy, depending on the circumstance and all of that. But to be able to get, changes that prevent that for the next family, that prevent that for the next individual is something that can really live on, long after the case, and something I think that you can really look back and, I think about my area of law, and, I feel really good about the work that we do and helping families, kind of get back on their feet. But that's not something that, in our area of law, we're really able to do. And so to be able to know that that's something that you guys are able to do and kind of focus on, and to help try to prevent these things from happening in the first place is really great to hear, and I think really important.
I think personal injury is a fascinating area of the law, and I'm surprised more students don't come out of school wanting to do it. You are truly helping individuals and families who are hurt. They've been hurt by a drunk driver or a car accident, or somebody, improperly built something, and they're hurt. And yes, there are frivolous cases, but there are frivolous cases in all practice areas. But your firm does really great work in helping these individuals. And I think you're selling yourself short when you say you guys don't make the change on the larger scale. I know you and your business partner are involved in Colorado Trial Lawyers Association. You guys are, your business partner is on the CU Law Alumni Board with me. You guys are making change in tons of different areas. Whether you can affect change with an insurance company, is a different story. But I think you guys do have a strong commitment to the practice of protecting the citizens of Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you're right. I should have clarified. We do, CTLA is a powerful organization, and we do get to affect change, through the legislature and things like that. It was more in the settlement agreement. I guess sometimes if you're suing a corporation, you could maybe get some change, but generally, it's just not something that we can, get an agreement, for people to drive safer or something to that extent. But you're absolutely right, and that is one of the more rewarding aspects of my job, and of also running, your own firm, because you get to decide the things that matter. You get to decide what kind of cases you're going to take. You get to decide how many of them you're going to take, and you get to decide, the type of lawyer that you're going to be and kind of the things that are going to matter to you. And that's been, at least in my experience, one of the most rewarding aspects of running my own firm was, look, there are a lot of different types of law that people can go into, and, everybody on all sides of almost all issues, deserves an attorney who's going to fight for them. But for me, when I went to law school, I actually wanted to be a public defender until I got some experience working for a personal injury law firm. But for me, it was always important that I wanted to be able to sleep at night, way more so than the money or anything like that. Like, I wanted to do law that I felt good about, that I could talk about and be like, I am proud of what I do. And that's something that I think owning your own firm really enables you to do. And I think that's a good segue into, this discussion. When did you and your partner, or I guess tell a story about how Rathod Mohamedbhai came to be? So I know you said you were working at a boutique firm for a little while. What kind of inspired you and Q to kind of start your own firm?
We just saw that we could accept the challenge, that we wanted to bet on ourselves. We saw areas that we could improve on, do things differently, and we took the plunge. We took the risk. I wouldn't recommend this to people starting firms, but we both took out a line of credit that was secured by our houses.
Oh, wow. You really bet on yourself.
I pulled out I had a state retirement. Yep. I pulled it out and I had $15,000 in my para, and I took a $5,000 penalty.
This is not financial advice, people. If you're listening, do not recommend, but yes.
And Q maxed out all his credit cards and cash he could scrounge up. And I think we had $17,000. And we got a office, and they gave us a remodel credit. So and we used that to buy our computers. And I worked my way from undergrad all the way through undergrad as a carpenter during the summers and superintendent during the school year. So I put the wood floors in and remodeled it and did it myself. I was actually in a trial, and I was I'd come back and my business partner Kusera would have a box set up with a laptop on it and a folding chair. And I would prep my crosses for the next day, and then I'd go in, lay wood floors, and then so our old office on Blake Street.
Wow.
And then go to bed at like 4 a.m, wake up, shave and shower in the sink and go back to trial. We did it on a shoestring when we started, and that was a little over 10 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, ours is interesting. We had about $10,000 and we had a website. And that was basically it. And that first year, we didn't even have an office. We officed at my dining room table in my apartment. We met our clients at Starbucks and McDonald's, sometimes in their houses, and we'd always sell it. We'd be like, listen, like, we're full service. We'll come to you. No need to come to, our office. Like, we'll meet you anywhere you want. Is there a Starbucks right next door to your house? Like, we'll meet you there. Not a problem. And it takes grit, it takes hustle, I would say, in those beginning days. And it's certainly a little bit of high risk, but it really is. I mean, to see where you guys have, now just learning where you guys started to like where you guys are today is one of, if not the preeminent civil rights firm in the whole region, and probably nationally. It's crazy. It's people I can't remember what that saying is. People overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year, but underestimate what they can accomplish in 5, or something like that.
But it was fun. It was when I remember there was a Colorado Lawyer article in our first year that they did on us because we were 100% minority-owned law firm.
Yeah.
We didn't look like any of the other law firms.
Breaking all kinds of molds.
We didn't do the type of work that other law firms do. We're pretty much primarily 100% contingency, besides for a few cases here and there. And they talked about, in the article, the pulley system we had rigged up to get our trash off the back roof down to the dumpsters instead of having to walk it all the way around the whole block.
Of course you guys do.
And, so we had like a rope tied to a trash can that we'd throw lower down off the building.
Wow.
And, it was fun. It's still fun.
Yeah.
And I think you asked what's the day in the life of a civil rights attorney. I think at a day in the life at Rathod Mohamedbhai, I think every attorney in our staff would say the same thing. It's a family. It's fun.
Yeah.
We're passionate about what we do. Everyone's excited, to do the work they do, and everyone likes each other, and we really value quality of life.
Right.
And I think if you put an emphasis on quality of life, and it allows you to focus on your cases, have the health that you need, the mental health that you need to deal with these difficult situations, and have fun doing it, which makes you a better attorney.
And that's something that I've learned, running our firm. We just hired our 8th individual, and, happy employees are better employees, and happy attorneys are better attorneys. And if you put an emphasis on everyone's happiness, then the work will come. And I think where a lot of businesses and a lot of law firms make the mistake is focusing on the work first. And obviously the work is super important, but if all you're looking for are results out of your employees, but in order to get them, they are not sleeping and they're working weekends and they never get to see their family, like they're either going to burn out or eventually the work product is going to suffer. And if you create a culture and a community around a shared mission or a shared value system, the work will be there, but also people will work with a smile on their face. They'll joke during the day. They'll laugh, and it'll be like, you got somebody's birthday party. You want to go leave at 3 p.m. to go hang out over here? Do it. Do it. Absolutely. Like if you give people that type of, or nurture them in that way, then I think you see those dividends down the road. And I think that's one of the cool things that we've realized over the years is that, and it's nothing against them because this is how it's been done for so long. A lot of firms just go about it the wrong way, in my view. They really just focus on the wrong thing, like, bill this many hours or get all of this done and forget the human beings, that they're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think that really comes down a lot to also your hiring decisions and hiring people who are self-motivated, hiring people who are committed to the mission and want the mission to succeed, want our clients to succeed. And they naturally will put that first, and then you kind of, when you have that type of team, we have 21 employees now.
Wow.
And, when you have that type of team, regardless of whether it's, your position is the intakes, which is so important to our firm.
Absolutely.
Or it's the person who's drafting the briefs or putting the discovery together. Everyone's kind of committed and they understand where their role fits into the greater mission, the greater success of these cases. And I think we've been lucky to find really great people to work with.
What is the most challenging aspect of running your own firm? Like what's the hardest part that you deal with?
I think the hardest thing when you work for yourself is that you have simultaneously the best and worst boss ever. And it's true. It's you put a ton of pressure on yourself when you start to get to the numbers that we're at. It's a lot of pressure to make sure that everyone's getting paid, that payroll's done, the rent's paid, that the systems that they need are there, and you can't lose sight of the legal work, though. You still got to work as a lawyer. And that can get a little, there were periods early on. I think we're now at a position where, our war chest is big enough that we don't really have to cross that bridge anymore.
Right.
But early on, there were definitely, times where we're like, are we going to make payroll?
Oh yeah.
I remember about, 7 years ago, we were within a month, within less than 30 days of not being able to make payroll. Yeah. And we were fully maxed out in a massive line of credit by this point. And we were close. Now we've, been able to, over the years, through time and experience and sophistication in our work, been able to kind of level that out and build a very, very large, I'll call it endowment.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have been super successful.
To fund
absolutely,
the firm.
absolutely.
But you have to keep that in there. You have to be prepared to say, hey, this money is here to run the firm for 2 years in case I don't make any money for 2 years. Yep. Because when you run a contingency law firm, you need to be able to front hundreds of thousands of dollars on each case. And you may not make any money for, a year or 2 years at a time.
Right.
And that's the type of system you need to, over time, implement. It's very hard to do that on day one.
Oh, super hard, man. We've been there. I've had those payroll scares, and then you start looking and you're like, all right, my partner Tim would be like, hey, all right, well, if we don't take a salary this month, then we should be good. And those first few months, man, it always seemed to work out, though. We'd always get right to the brink, and then something would happen, case would settle, we'd sign a new criminal client, something would happen, and we would, be able to save it. But absolutely, I agree with you. Every time you're able to put a little bit more into that war chest or that savings account, and now I look at it and I'm like, all right, even if everything goes wrong and we don't make $1, for X amount of time, we're going to be fine. And it's really rewarding to get there.
And when you want to start doing the bigger and bigger cases, you got to recognize that
more and more money.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost to do these big cases. And you have to be able to front it. Our clients that we serve are indigent, don't have the ability to pay their cost.
Yep.
And you've got to recognize that hey, you may never see this money.
Yep.
And you still got to handle the case in the best interest of your client.
Right.
And that might mean settling, and that might mean going to trial. But it's not what's in your personal financial best interest. I've had cases where I've won on summary judgment and I've had $1 million in attorney's fees, and I've settled it for less than that $1 million because it's better off for my client.
Right.
And I take a bath.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing for my case. That's the best thing for my client.
Absolutely.
So, it's been a great ride.
Well, I like to end on one question that I ask a lot of our guests, and I wanted to specifically ask this to you because you're also super active at CU Law, former chair, I believe, of the Alumni Association up there, and obviously you teach at the law school, so also super active. But what is one thing, because a lot of our listeners are law students, we do have quite a few young lawyers, but we also have a fairly large law student following. What is one thing you wish you knew 1L year that you know now? What's one thing that you wish you could go back and just tell yourself, like, hey man, this is important?
I think take a breath, take a pause, regardless whether you are the number one student or the last student in your class. We all put too much pressure on ourselves. And I think if you take a step back, work hard, and kind of recognize that, hey, you know what? I may make mistakes. I may slip up, but try to find something that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, then you're going to be successful. And I think that goes for work too. Don't take the big firm job just because it pays the most.
Right.
If you love it, and I have a lot of friends who are in big firms and they love it, that's amazing. But for me, it wasn't for me. Yes, I made more in 12 weeks at a big firm than I did in my first 12 months at the public defender's office. But I was much happier.
Right.
And the money will come. The money will come with time if you're focused on being happy and finding something you're passionate about.
Well, Siddhartha, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and talking about what's really an interesting career and a super interesting and incredibly important area of law. If any of our listeners are interested in either civil rights law or running their own firm or anything kind of that we've talked about today, and they want to grab coffee with you or something like that, what's kind of the best way to get a hold of you? Is that like maybe an email or something like that?
Yeah, shoot me an email. I'm always happy to talk with people and go get coffee, or, there's, a dozen attorneys in our office, and there's, great resources there, from all different perspectives. So yeah, just reach out, and we love meeting new people in the community. We like lawyers. I think a lot of lawyers like lawyers, but we like lawyers.
They may not always admit it, but they do.
We have a lot of lawyers in our building, and we do that because we enjoy being around them. We like how they think, and so yeah, always reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. It was always a pleasure. And yeah, thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Get legal with it.